It was almost 2 in the afternoon. Olive felt as though her bones weighed twice as much as the day before. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and began typing her reply to Adam. She knew what she had to do. She knocked on his door at 5 sharp, and he answered just a few seconds later, still dressed in slacks and a button-down that must have been his interview attire, and smiling at her. Not one of those half-baked things she'd gotten used to, but a real, true smile, with dimples and crinkles around his eyes, and genuine happiness to see her. It shattered her heart in a million pieces before he even spoke. Olive. She still hadn't figured it out, why the way he said her name was so unique. There was something packed behind it, something that didn't quite make it to the surface. A sense of possibilities. Of depth. Olive wondered if it was real, if she was hallucinating it, if he was aware. Olive wondered a lot of things, and then told herself to stop. It couldn't matter less now. Come in. It was an even fancier hotel, and Olive rolled her eyes, wondering why people felt the need to waste thousands of dollars in lodgings for Adam Carlson when he barely paid attention to his surroundings. They should just give him a cot and donate the money to worthy causes. Endangered whales. Psoriasis. Olive. I brought this. I'm assuming it's yours. She took a couple of steps toward him and held out a phone charger, letting the cable end dangle, making sure that Adam wouldn't need to touch her. It is. Thank you. It was behind the bedside lamp, probably why you forgot it. She pressed her lips together. Or maybe it's old age. Maybe dementia has already set in. All those amyloid plaques. He glared at her and she tried not to smile, but she already was, and he was rolling his eyes and calling her a smartass, and here they were, doing this again. Damn it. She let her eyes wander away because no, not anymore. How was the interview? Good. Just day 1, though. Of how many? Too many. He sighed. I have grant meetings with Tom scheduled, too. Tom. Right. Of course. Of course, this was why she was here. To explain to him that. Thank you for coming out, he said, voice quiet and earnest. As though by hopping on a train and agreeing to see him, Olive had given him a great deal of pleasure. I figured you might be busy with your friends. She shook her head. No. On's out with Jeremy. I'm sorry, he said, looking genuinely regretful for her, and it took Olive several moments to recall her lie and his assumption that she was in love with Jeremy. Only a few weeks earlier, but it already seemed so long ago when she hadn't been able to imagine anything worse than Adam discovering her feelings for him. It sounded so foolish after everything that had happened in the past few days. She should really come clean, but what was the point now? Let Adam think what he liked. It would serve him better than the truth, after all. And Malcolm is with Holden. Ah, yes. He nodded, looking exhausted. Olive briefly fantasized about Holden texting Adam the equivalent of what Olive and On had been subjected to for the past 2 hours, and smiled. How bad is it? Bad. This thing between Malcolm and Holden? Ah. Adam leaned his shoulder against the wall, folding his arms across his chest. I think it can be very good. For Holden, at least. He really likes Malcolm. Did he tell you? He hasn't shut up about it. He rolled his eyes. Did you know that Holden is secretly 12? She laughed. So is Malcolm. He dates a lot, and he's usually good at managing expectations, but this thing with Holden, I had a sandwich for lunch, and he randomly volunteered that Holden is allergic to peanuts. It wasn't even PB&J. He's not allergic, he fakes it because he doesn't like nuts. He massaged his temple. This morning I woke up to a haiku about Malcolm's elbows. Holden had texted it at 3 a.m. Was it good? He lifted one eyebrow, and she laughed again. They are the worst. Adam shook his head. but I think Holden might need it. Someone to care about, who also cares about him. Malcolm, too. I'm just concerned that he might want more than Holden is willing to offer. Believe me, Holden is very ready to file taxes jointly. Good. I'm glad. She smiled, and then felt her smile fade, just as quickly. One-sided relationships are really not good. I would know, and maybe you would, too. He studied his own palm, undoubtedly thinking about the woman Holden had mentioned. No, they're not. It was a weird kind of ache, the jealousy. Confusing, unfamiliar, not something she was used to. Half cutting, half disorienting and aimless. So different from the loneliness she'd felt since she was 15. Olive missed her mother every day, but with time she'd been able to harness her pain and turn it into motivation for her work. Into purpose. Jealousy, though, the misery of it didn't come with any gain. Only restless thoughts, and something squeezing at her chest whenever her mind turned to Adam. I need to ask you something, he said. The seriousness of his tone made her look up. Sure. The people you overheard at the conference yesterday. She stiffened. I'd rather not. I won't force you to do anything. But whoever they were, I want. I think you should consider filing a complaint. Oh God. Was this some cruel joke? You really like complaints, don't you? She laughed once, a weak attempt at humor. I'm serious, Olive. And if you decide you want to do it, I'll help you however I can. I could come with you and talk with SBD's organizers, or we could go through Stanford's Title IX office. No. Adam, no. I'm not going to file a complaint. She rubbed her eyes with the tips of her fingers, feeling as though this was one giant, painful prank. Except that Adam had no idea. He actually wanted to protect her when all Olive wanted was to protect him. I've already decided. It would do more harm than good. I know why you think that. I felt the same during grad school with my mentor. We all did. But there are ways to do it. Whoever this person is, Adam. She ran one hand down her face. I need you to drop this. Please. He studied her, silent for several minutes, and then nodded. Okay. Of course. He pushed away from the wall and straightened, clearly unhappy to let the subject go, but making an effort to do so. Would you like to go to dinner? There's a Mexican restaurant nearby. Or sushi, real sushi. And a movie theater. Maybe there are 1 or 2 movies playing in which horses don't die. I'm not hungry, actually. Oh. His expression was teasing. Gentle. I didn't know that was possible. Me neither. She chuckled weakly and then forced herself to continue. Today is September 29th. A beat. Adam studied her, patient and curious. It is. She bit into her lower lip. Do you know what the chair has decided about your funds? Oh, right. The funds will be unfrozen. He seemed happy, his eyes brilliant in an almost boyish way. It broke her heart a little. I meant to tell you tonight at dinner. That's great. She managed to smile, small and pitiful in her mounting anxiety. That's really great, Adam. I'm happy for you. Must have been your sunscreen skills. Yeah. Her laugh sounded fake. I'll have to put them on my CV. Fake girlfriend with extensive experience. Microsoft Office and excellent sunscreen skills. Available immediately. Only serious callers. Not immediately. He looked at her curiously. Tenderly. Not for a while, I'd say. The weight, the one that had been pressing into her stomach since she'd realized what needed to be done, sank heavier. Now, this was it. The coda. The moment it all ended. Olive could do this, and she would, and things would be all the better for it. I think I should be. She swallowed, and it was like acid down her throat. Available. She scanned his face, noticed his confusion, and clenched her fist in the hem of her sweater. We gave ourselves a deadline, Adam. And we accomplished everything we wanted. Jeremy and Honor's solid. I doubt they even remember that Jeremy and I used to date. And your funds have been released, which is amazing. The truth is... Her eyes stung. She closed them tight, managing to push the tears back.
Barely.
The truth, Adam, is that your friend, your collaborator, a person you clearly love and are close to, is horrid and despicable. He told me things that might be truths or maybe lies, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure of anything anymore, and I would love to ask you, so badly. But I'm terrified that he might be right and that you won't believe me. And I'm even more terrified that you will believe me and that what I tell you will force you to give up something that is very important to you, your friendship and your work with him. I'm terrified of everything, as you can see. So, instead of telling you that truth, I will tell you another truth. A truth that I think will be best for you. A truth that will take me out of the equation, but will make its result better. Because I'm starting to wonder if this is what being in love is. Being okay with ripping yourself to shreds so the other person can stay whole. She inhaled deeply. The truth is, we did great. And it's time we call it quits. She could tell from how his lips parted, from his disoriented eyes searching hers, that he wasn't yet parsing what she'd said. I don't think we'll need to explicitly tell anyone, she continued. People won't see us together, and after a while they'll think that it didn't work out, that we broke up. And maybe you. This was the hardest part. But he deserved to hear it. He'd told her the same, after all, when he believed her in love with Jeremy. I wish you all the best, Adam. At Harvard and with your real girlfriend, whoever you may choose. I cannot imagine anyone not reciprocating your feelings. She could pinpoint the exact moment it dawned on him. She could tease apart the feelings struggling in his face, the surprise, the confusion, a hint of stubbornness, a split second of vulnerability that all melted in a blank, empty expression. Then she could see his throat work. Right, he said. Right. He was staring at his shoes, absolutely motionless, slowly accepting her words. Olive took a step back and rocked on her heels. Outside, an iPhone rang, and a few seconds later someone burst into laughter.
Normal noises on a normal day.
Normal, all of this. It's for the best, she said, because the silence between them, that she just couldn't stand. It's what we agreed on. Whatever you want. His voice was hoarse and he seemed absent, retreated to some place inside himself. Whatever you need. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me. Not just about On. When we met, I felt so alone and, for a moment, she couldn't continue. Thank you for all the pumpkin spice and for that Western blot and for hiding your taxidermied squirrels when I visited and... She couldn't bring herself to go on anymore, not without choking on her words. The stinging in her eyes was burning now, threatening to spill over, so she nodded once, decisively, a period to this dangling sentence with no end in sight. And that would have been it. It would have surely been the end. They would have left it at that if Olive hadn't passed him on her way to the door. If he hadn't reached out and stopped her with a hand on her wrist. If he hadn't immediately pulled that hand back and stared at it with an appalled expression, as if shocked that he'd dared to touch her without asking for permission first. If he hadn't said, Olive, if you ever need anything, anything at all, anything, whenever, you can come to me. His jaw worked like there were other words he was keeping inside. I want you to come to me. She almost didn't register wiping wetness off her cheek with the back of her hand, or moving closer to him. It was his scent that jolted her alert. Soap and something dark, subtle but oh so familiar. Her brain had him mapped out, stored away across all senses. Eyes to his almost smile, hands to his skin, the smell of him in her nostrils. She didn't even need to think about what to do, just push up on her toes, press her fingers against his biceps, and kiss him gently on the cheek. His skin was soft and warm and a little prickly, unexpected, but not unwelcome. An apt goodbye, she thought. Appropriate. Acceptable. And so was his hand coming up to her lower back, pulling her into his body and stopping her from sliding back on her heels, or the way his head turned, until her lips were not brushing the skin of his cheek anymore. Her breath hitched, a chuff against the corner of his mouth, and for a few precious seconds she just savored it, the deep pleasure that ran through them both as they closed their eyes and let themselves just be here with each other. Quiet. Still. One last moment. Then Olive opened her mouth and turned her head, breathing against his lips. Please. Adam groaned deep in his chest. But she was the one who closed the space between them, who deepened the kiss, who combed her hands into his hair, short nails scraping against his scalp. She was the one who pulled him even closer, and he was the one who pushed her back against the wall and moaned into her mouth. It was frightening. Frightening how good this felt, how easy it would be to never stop, to let time stretch and unbend, forget about everything else, and simply stay in this moment forever. But Adam pulled back first, holding her eyes as he tried to collect himself. It was good, wasn't it? Olive asked, with a small, wistful smile. She wasn't herself sure what she was referring to. Maybe his arms around her. Maybe this last kiss. Maybe everything else. The sunscreen, his ridiculous answers on his favorite color, the quiet conversations late at night, all of it had been so very good. It was. Adam's voice sounded too deep to be his own. When he pressed his lips against her forehead one last time, she felt her love for him swell fuller than a river in flood. I think I should leave, she told him gently, without looking at him. He let her go wordlessly, so she did. When she heard the click of the door closing behind her, it was like falling from a great height. Chapter 19. Hypothesis. When in doubt, asking a friend will save my ass. Olive spent the following day in the hotel, sleeping, crying, and doing the very thing that had gotten her into this mess to begin with. Lying. She told Malcolm and on that she'd be busy with friends from college for the entire day, pulled the blackout curtains together, and then buried herself in her bed, which technically was Adam's bed. She didn't let herself think about the situation too much. Something inside her, her heart, very possibly, was broken in several large pieces, not shattered as much as neatly snapped in half, and then in half again. All she could do was sit down amid the debris of her feelings and wallow. Sleeping through most of the day helped dull the pain a great deal. Numb, she was rapidly starting to realize was good. She lied the day after, too. Feigned a last-minute request from Dr. Aslan when asked to join her friends at the conference or on excursions around Boston, and then took a deep, fortifying breath. She drew the curtains open, forced her blood to start flowing again, with 50 crunches, 50 jumping jacks, and 50 push-ups, though she cheated on the last by going on her knees, then showered and brushed her teeth for the first time in 36 hours. It wasn't easy. Seeing Adam's biology ninja t-shirt in the mirror made her tear up, but she reminded herself that she'd made her choice. She decided to put Adam's well-being first, and she didn't regret it. But she'd be damned if she let Tom fucking Benton take credit for a project she had worked on for years. A project that meant the world to her. Maybe her life was nothing but a little sob story, but it was her little sob story. Her heart may be broken, but her brain was doing just fine. Adam had said that the reason most professors hadn't bothered to reply, perhaps even read her email, was that she was a student. So she followed his advice. She emailed Dr. Aslan and asked her to introduce Olive to all the researchers she'd previously contacted, plus the 2 people who'd been on her panel and had shown interest in her work. Dr. Aslan was close to retirement and had more or less given up on producing science, but she was still a full professor at Stanford.
It had to mean something.
Then Olive Googled extensively about research ethics, plagiarism, and theft of ideas. The issue was a little murky, given that Olive had, quite recklessly, she now realized, described all her protocols in detail in her report for Tom. But once she began examining the situation with a clearer head, she decided that it wasn't as dire as she'd initially thought. The report she'd written, after all, was well-structured and thorough. With a few tweaks, she could turn it into a scholarly publication. It would hopefully go quickly through peer review, and the findings would be credited under her name. What she decided to focus on was that despite all his insults and rude comments, Tom, one of the top cancer researchers in the United States, had expressed interest in stealing her research ideas. She took it as a very, very backhanded compliment. She spent the next several hours carefully avoiding thoughts of Adam and instead researching other potential scientists who might be able to support her the following year. It was a long shot, but she had to try. When someone knocked on her door, it was already the middle of the afternoon, and she'd added 3 new names to her list. She quickly put on clothes to answer, expecting housekeeping. When Ann and Malcolm stormed inside, she cursed herself for never checking the peephole. She truly deserved to be axed by a serial killer. "Okay," Ann said, throwing herself onto Olive's still-made bed. "You have 2 sentences to convince me that I shouldn't be mad at you for forgetting to ask how my outreach event went."
Shit.
Olive covered her mouth with her hand. "I am so sorry. How did it go?" "Perfect." Ann's eyes were shiny with happiness. "We had such great attendance, and everyone loved it. We're thinking of making this a yearly thing and formally establishing an organization. Peer-to-peer mentoring. Hear this. Every grad is assigned 2 undergrads. Once they get into grad school, they mentor 2 more undergrads each. And in 10 years, we take over the entire damn world." Olive looked at her, speechless. You're amazing." "I am, aren't I? Okay, now's your turn to grovel."
And go.
Olive opened her mouth, but for a long time nothing really came out. "I don't really have an excuse. I was just busy with something Dr. Aslan asked me to finish." "This is ridiculous. You're in Boston. You should be out there in an Irish pub pretending you love the Red Sox and eating donkeys, not doing work for your boss." "We're technically here for a work conference," Olive pointed out. "Conference schmonference." Malcolm joined on the bed. "Can we please go out, the 3 of us?" Ann begged. "Let's do the Freedom Trail. With ice cream and beer." "Where's Jeremy?" Presenting his poster. "And I'm bored." Ann's grin was impish. Olive was not in the mood for socializing or beer or freedom trails, but at some point she was going to have to learn to productively navigate society with a broken heart. She smiled and said, "Let me check my email, and then we can go." She had, inexplicably, accumulated about 15 messages in the 30 minutes since she'd last checked, only one of which wasn't spam. Today, 3:11 p.m. From Iskal-Aslan at Stanford, edu. To Olive-Smith at Stanford, edu. Subject: Reaching out to researchers for pancreatic cancer.
Project:
Olive. I'd be happy to introduce you and ask scholars about opportunities for you in their labs. I agree that they might be more welcoming if the email comes from me. Send me your list, please. By the way, you still haven't sent the recording of your talk. I cannot wait to listen to it. Warmly, Iskal-Aslan, Ph.D. Olive did some mental calculations to determine whether it was polite to send the list and not the recording, probably not, sighed, and started airdropping the file to her laptop. When she realized that it was several hours long, because she'd forgotten to stop her phone after her talk, her sigh morphed into a groan. "This'll take a while, guys. I have to send Dr. Aslan an audio file, and I'll need to edit it beforehand."
"Fine,"
An huffed. "Malcolm, would you like to entertain us with tales of your date with Holden?" "Okay." First, he wore the cutest baby blue button-down. Baby blue. Shut your mouth with that skeptical tone. Then he got me one flower. Where did he get the flower? Not sure. Olive poked around the MP3, trying to figure out where to cut the file. The ending was just minute after minute of silence from when she'd left her phone in the hotel room. "Maybe he stole it from the buffet," she said absent-mindedly. "I think I saw pink carnations downstairs." "Was it a pink carnation?" "Maybe." An cackled. "And they say romance is dead." "Shut up." Then, toward the beginning of the date, something happened. Something catastrophic that could only ever happen to me, given that my entire damn family is obsessed with science and, therefore, attends all the conferences. All of them.
"No."
Tell me you didn't.
"Yes."
When we got to the restaurant, we found my mother, father, uncle, and grandfather, who insisted on us joining them, which means that my first date with Holden was a freaking Thanksgiving dinner. Olive looked up from her laptop and shared an appalled look with An. "How bad was it?" "Funny that you ask, because it is with the utmost disconcert that I must say, it was fucking spectacular. They loved him because he's a badass scientist and because he is smoother than an organic smoothie, and in the span of 2 hours he somehow managed to help me convince my parents that my plan of being an industry scientist is bomb. I'm not kidding. This morning my mother called and was all about how I have grown as a person and am finally in control of my future and how my dating choices reflect that. She said that Dad agrees. Can you believe it? Anyway, after dinner we got ice cream, and then we went back to Holden's hotel room and 69'd like the world was about to end. A girl like you, who figured out so early in her academic career that fucking well-known, successful scholars is how to get ahead. You fucked Adam, didn't you? We both know you're going to fuck me for the same reason. Olive slammed the spacebar, immediately stopping the replay of the recording. Her heart was pounding in her chest, first from confusion, then from the realization of what she'd inadvertently recorded, and finally from anger at hearing the words again. She brought a trembling hand to her lips, trying to purge Tom's voice from her head. She had spent 2 days trying to recover, and now... The hell was that? Malcolm asked. Oh well. An's tentative voice reminded her that she was not alone in the room. She looked up and found that her friends had sat up. They were staring at her, wide-eyed with concern and shock. Olive shook her head. She didn't want to, no. She didn't have the strength to explain. Nothing. Just. I recognize it, An said, coming to sit next to her. I recognize the voice. From that talk we went to. She paused, searching Olive's eyes. That was Tom Benton, wasn't it? What the? Malcolm stood. There was real alarm blooming in his voice. Anger, too. Oh well. Why do you have a recording of Tom Benton saying shit like that? What happened? Olive looked up at him, then at An, then at him again. They were studying her with worried, incredulous expressions. An must have taken Olive's hand at some point. She told herself that she needed to be strong, to be pragmatic, to be numb, but... She tried. She really did try. But her face crumpled, and the last few days crashed and burned into her. Olive leaned forward, buried her head in An's lap, and let herself burst into tears. Olive had no intention of hearing Tom spout his poison again, so she gave her friends her headphones, went to the bathroom, and let the faucet run until they'd finished listening. It took less than 10 minutes, but she sobbed throughout. When Malcolm and On came in, they sat next to her on the floor. On was crying, too, fat, angry drops sliding down her cheeks. At least there's a bathtub we can flood, Olive thought while handing her the toilet paper roll she'd been hoarding. He's the most disgusting, detestable, shameful, disgraceful human being, Malcolm said. I hope he has explosive diarrhea as we speak. I hope he gets genital warts. I hope he has to live saddled by the largest, most painful hemorrhoid in the universe. I hope he... On interrupted him. Does Adam know? Olive shook her head. You need to tell him. And then the two of you need to report Benton's ass and get him kicked out of academia. No, I can't. Oh well, listen to me. What Tom said is sexual harassment. There is no way Adam wouldn't believe you. Not to mention that you have a recording. It doesn't matter. Of course it does. Olive wiped her cheeks with her palms. If I tell Adam, he's not going to want to collaborate with Tom anymore, and the project they're working on is too important to him. Not to mention that he wants to move to Harvard next year, and... On snorted. No, he doesn't.
Yes.
He told me that. Oh well, I've seen the way he looks at you. He's head over feet. There is no way he'll want to move to Boston if you're not going, and I'm sure as hell not letting you go work for this dipshit.
What?
Her eyes darted from Olive to Malcolm, who were exchanging a long glance. Why are you guys looking at each other like that? And why are you making your inside joke faces? Malcolm sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Okay, On, listen carefully. And before you ask, no, I'm not making this up. This is real life. He took a deep breath before starting. Carlson and Olive never dated. They pretended so you'd believe that Olive wasn't into Jeremy anymore, which she never was in the first place. Not sure what Carlson was getting out of the arrangement, I forgot to ask. But halfway through the fake dating, Olive caught feelings for Carlson, proceeded to lie to him about it, and pretended to be in love with someone else. But then, he gave Olive a side glance.
Well,
I didn't want to be nosy, but judging from the fact that the other day only one bed in this hotel room was unmade, I'm pretty sure there have been some recent developments. It was so painfully accurate, Olive had to bury her face in her knees. Just in time to hear On say, "This is not real life." It is.
nah.
This is a Hallmark movie, or a poorly written young adult novel. That will not sell well. Olive, tell Malcolm to keep his day job. He'll never make it as a writer. Olive made herself look up, and On's frown was the deepest she'd ever seen. It's true, On. I am so sorry I lied to you. I didn't want to, but... You fake dated Adam Carlson? Olive nodded. God, I knew that kiss was weird. She lifted her hands defensively. On, I'm sorry. You fake dated Adam.
Fucking.
Carlson. It seemed like a good idea, and... But I saw you kiss him. In the biology building parking lot. Only because you forced me to. But you sat on his lap. Once again, you forced me to. Not the coolest moment in our friendship, by the way. But you put sunscreen on him. In front of at least 100 people. Only because someone put me up to it. Do you sense a pattern? On shook her head, as if suddenly appalled at her own actions. You guys looked so good together. It was so obvious from the way Adam stared at you that he was wild about you. And the opposite, you looked at him like he was the only guy on earth, and then it always seemed like you were forcing yourself to hold back on him, and I wanted you to know that you could express your feelings if you wanted to. I really thought I was helping you, and you fake dated Adam Carlson. Olive sighed. Listen, I'm sorry I lied. Please don't hate me. I don't hate you. Oh, you don't. Of course not. On was indignant. I low-key hate myself for forcing you to do all that stuff. Well, maybe not hate, but I'd write myself a strongly worded email. And I'm incredibly flattered that you'd do something like that for me. I mean, it was misguided and ridiculous and needlessly convoluted, and you're a living, breathing, rom-com trope machine, and God, OL, you're such an idiot. But a very lovable idiot, and my idiot. She shook her head, incredulous, but squeezed her hand on Olive's knee and glanced at Malcolm.
Wait.
Is your thing with Rodriguez real? Or are you two pretending to bone so a judge will give him custody of his recently orphaned godchildren? Very real. Malcolm's smile was smug. We fuck like bunnies. Fantastic. Well, OL, we'll talk about this more. A lot more. We'll probably only talk about the greatest fake dating event of the 21st century for millennia to come, but for now we should focus on Tom, and it changes nothing whether you and Adam are together. I still think he'd want to know. I'd want to know. OL, if the situation were inverted, if you were the one who stood to lose something and Adam had been sexually harassed. I haven't. Yes, OL, you have. On's eyes were earnest, burning into hers, and it occurred to Olive then the enormity of what had happened, of what Tom had done. She took a shuddering breath. If the situation were inverted, I would want to know. But it's different. Why is it different? Because I'm in love with Adam. And he's not in love with me. Olive massaged her temples, trying to think against the mounting headache. I don't want to take something he loves away from him. Adam respects and admires Tom, and I know Tom's had Adam's back in the past. Maybe he's better off not knowing. If only there were a way to find out what Adam would prefer, Malcolm said. Olive sniffled in response.
Yeah.
If only there were someone who knows Adam very well that we might ask, Malcolm said, louder this time. Yeah, On repeated. That would be great. But there isn't, so. If only there were someone in this room who recently started dating Adam's closest friend of nearly 3 decades, Malcolm near yelled, full of passive-aggressive indignity, and On and Olive exchanged a wide-eyed look. Holden. You could ask Holden for advice. Malcolm huffed. You two can be so smart and yet so slow. Olive suddenly recalled something. Holden hates Tom. Why does he hate him? I don't know. She shrugged. Adam wrote it off as some odd personality quirk of Holden's, but...
Hey.
My man's personality is perfect. Maybe there is something else? On nodded energetically. Malcolm, where can Olive find Holden right this minute? I don't know, but he tapped his phone with a smug smile. I happen to have his number right here. Holden, or Holden Bubble, but as Malcolm had saved him in his contacts, was just finishing up his talk. Olive caught the last 5 minutes of it, something about crystallography she neither understood nor wanted to, and was totally unsurprised by how smooth and charismatic a speaker he was. She approached him on the podium once he was done answering questions, and he smiled when he noticed her walk up the stairs, seeming genuinely happy to see her. Olive. My new roommate-in-law.
Right. Yes.
Great talk. She ordered herself to stop wringing her hands. I wanted to ask you a question. Is it about the nucleic acids in the 4th slide? Because I totally BS'd my way through them. My PhD student made the figure, and she's way smarter than me.
No.
The question is about Adam. Holden's expression brightened. Well, actually, it's about Tom Benton. It darkened just as quickly. What about Tom?
Right.
What about Tom precisely? Olive wasn't quite sure how to approach the topic. She wasn't even sure what she meant to ask. Sure, she could have barfed up her entire life story for Holden and begged him to fix this mess for her, but somehow it didn't seem like a good idea. She racked her brain for a moment and then landed on. Did you know that Adam is thinking about moving to Boston?
Yeah.
Holden rolled his eyes and pointed at the tall windows. There were large, ominous clouds threatening to explode with torrential rain. The wind, already chilly in September, was shaking a lonely hickory tree. "Who wouldn't want to move here from California?" he scoffed. Olive liked the idea of seasons, but she kept the thought to herself. "Do you think he'd be happy here?" Holden studied her intensely for a minute. "You know, you were already my favorite girlfriend of Adam's. Not that there were many. You're the only woman who could compete with computational modeling in about a decade, but that question wins you a lifelong #1 plaque." He pondered the matter for a minute. "I think Adam could be happy here, in his own way, of course. Broodingly, unenthusiastically happy. But yes, happy. Provided that you're here, too." Olive had to stop herself from snorting. "Provided that Tom behaves." "Why do you say that? About Tom?" "I don't mean to pry, but you told me to watch my back with him in Stanford. You don't like him?"
He sighed.
"It's not that I don't like him, even though I don't. It's more that I don't trust him." "Why, though?" "Adam told me about the things Tom did for him when your advisor was abusive. See, this is where a big part of my mistrust comes in." Holden, worried at his lower lip, as if deciding whether and how to continue. "Did Tom intercede to save Adam's ass on numerous occasions?"
Sure.
"It's undeniable. But how did those occasions come about to begin with? Our advisor was a piece of work, but he was not a micromanager. By the time we joined his lab, he was too busy being a famous asshole to know what was going on in day-to-day lab business. Which is why he had postdocs like Tom mentor grad students like Adam and me and de facto run the lab. And yet, he knew about every single minor screw-up of Adam's. Every few weeks he'd come in, tell Adam that he was a failure of a human being for minor stuff like switching reagents or dropping a beaker, and then Tom, our advisor's most trusted postdoc, would publicly intervene on behalf of Adam and save the day. The pattern was eerily specific and only for Adam, who was by far the most promising student in our program, destined for greatness and all that. Initially, it made me a bit suspicious that Tom was purposefully sabotaging Adam. But in recent years, I've been wondering if what he wanted was something else altogether." "Did you tell Adam?"
Yes.
"But I had no proof, and Adam, well, you know him. He is stubbornly, unwaveringly loyal, and he was more than a little grateful to Tom." He shrugged. "They ended up becoming bros, and they've been close friends ever since." "Did it bother you?" "Not per se, no. I realize I might sound jealous of their friendship, but the truth is that Adam has always been too focused and single-minded to have many friends. I'd have been happy for him, truly. But Tom..." Olive nodded.
Yeah, Tom.
"Why would he do this? This weird vendetta against Adam?" Holden sighed. "This is why Adam dismissed my concerns. There really isn't an obvious reason. The truth is, I don't think Tom hates Adam. Or at least, I don't think it's that simple. But I do believe that Tom is smart and very, very cunning. That there probably is some jealousy involved, some desire to take advantage of Adam, to maybe control or have power over him. Adam tends to downplay his accomplishments, but he's one of the best scientists of our generation. Having influence over him, that's a privilege and no small feat." "Yeah." She nodded again. The question, the one she'd come here to ask, was starting to take shape in her mind. Knowing all of this, knowing how important Tom is to Adam, if you had proof of how Tom really is, would you show Adam? To his credit, Holden didn't ask what the proof was, or proof of what. He scanned Olive's face with an intent, thoughtful expression, and when he spoke, his words were careful. "I can't answer that for you. I don't think I should." He drummed his fingers on the podium, as if deep in thought. "But I do want to tell you 3 things. The first you probably already know. Adam is first and foremost a scientist.
So am I, and so are you.
And good science only happens when we draw conclusions based on all available evidence, not just the ones that are easy, or that confirm our hypotheses. Wouldn't you agree? Olive nodded, and he continued. The second is something you may or may not be aware of because it has to do with politics and academia, which are not easy to fully grasp until you find yourself sitting through 5-hour-long faculty meetings every other week. But here's the deal. The collaboration between Adam and Tom benefits Tom more than it does Adam, which is why Adam is the main investigator of the grant they were awarded. Tom is, well, replaceable. Don't get me wrong. He's a very good scientist, but most of his fame is due to him having been our former advisor's best and brightest. He inherited a lab that was an already well-oiled machine and kept it going. Adam created his own research line from the ground up, and I think he tends to forget how good he is, which is probably for the best because he's already pretty insufferable. He huffed. Can you imagine if he had a big ego, too? Olive laughed at that, and the sound came out oddly wet. When she raised her hands to her cheeks, she was not surprised to find them glistening. Apparently, weeping silently was her new baseline state. The last thing, Holden continued, unbothered by the waterworks, is something you probably do not know. He paused. Adam has been recruited by a lot of institutions in the past. A lot. He's been offered money, prestigious positions, unlimited access to facilities and equipment. That includes Harvard. This year was not their first attempt at bringing him in, but it's the first time he's agreed to interview. And he only agreed after you decided to go work in Tom's lab. He gave her a gentle smile and then looked away, beginning to collect his things and slide them inside his backpack. Make of that what you will, Olive. Chapter 20. Hypothesis. People who cross me will come to regret it. She had to lie. Again. It was becoming a bit of a habit, and while she spun an elaborate tale for the secretary of Harvard's biology department, one in which she was a grad student of Dr. Carlson's who needed to track him down immediately to relay a crucial message in person, she swore to herself that this would be the last time. It was too stressful. Too difficult. Not worth the strain on her cardiovascular and psychophysical health. Plus, she sucked at it. The department secretary didn't look like she believed a word of what Olive said, but she must have decided that there was no harm in telling her where the biology faculty had taken Adam out for dinner, according to Yelp, a fancy restaurant that was less than a 10-minute Uber ride away. Olive looked down at her ripped jeans and lilac Converse and wondered if they'd let her in. Then she wondered if Adam would be mad. Then she wondered if she was making a mistake and screwing up her own life, Adam's life, her Uber driver's life. She was very tempted to change her destination to the conference hotel when the car pulled up to the curb and the driver, Sarah Helen, according to the app, turned around with a smile. Here we are. Thank you. Olive started getting out of the passenger seat and found that she couldn't move her legs. Are you okay? Sarah Helen asked. Yeah. Just done. Are you gonna puke in my car? Olive shook her head. No. Yes. Maybe. Don't. Or I'll destroy your rating. Olive nodded and tried to slide out of the seat. Her limbs were still non-responsive. Sarah Helen frowned. Hey, what's wrong? There was a lump in her throat. I need to do a thing that I don't want to do. Sarah Helen hummed. Is it a work thing or a love thing? Both. Yikes. Sarah Helen scrunched up her nose. Double threat. Can you put it off? No, not really. Can you ask someone else to do it for you? No. Can you change your name, cauterize your fingertips, enter the witness protection program, and disappear? Not sure. I'm not an American citizen, though. Probably no, then. Can you say fuck it and deal with the consequences? Olive closed her eyes and thought about it. What, exactly, would the consequences be if she didn't do what she was planning to? Tom would be free to keep on being an absolute piece of shit, for one. And Adam would never know that he was being taken advantage of. He would move to Boston. And Olive would never have a chance to talk to him again, and all that he'd meant to her would end. In a lie after a lot of lies. So many lies she'd told, so many true things she could have said but never did, all because she'd been too scared of the truth, of driving the people she loved away from her. All because she'd been afraid to lose them. All because she hadn't wanted to be alone again. Well, the lying hadn't worked out too well. In fact, it had downright sucked lately. Time for plan B, then. Time for some truth.
No.
I don't want to deal with the consequences. Sarah Helen smiled. Then, my friend, you better go do your thing. She pressed a button, and the passenger door unlocked with a clunk. And you better give me a perfect rating for the free psychotherapy. This time, Olive managed to get out of the car. She tipped Sarah Helen 150%, took a deep breath, and made her way into the restaurant. She found Adam immediately. He was big, after all, and the restaurant was not, which made for a pretty quick search. Not to mention that he was sitting with about 10 people who looked a lot like very serious Harvard professors. And, of course, Tom. Fuck my life, she thought, slipping past the busy hostess and walking toward Adam. She figured that her bright red duffel coat would attract his attention. Then she'd gesticulate for him to check his phone and text him to please give her 5 minutes of his time when dinner was over. She figured that telling him tonight was the best option. His interview would be over tomorrow, and he'd be able to make his decision with the truth at his disposal. She figured her plan might work. She had not figured that Adam would notice her while in conversation with a young, beautiful faculty member. She had not figured that he'd suddenly stop speaking, eyes widening and lips parting, that he'd mutter, "Excuse me," while staring at Olive and stand from the table, ignoring the curious looks in his direction, that he'd march to the entrance where Olive was, with quick, long strides and a concerned expression. "Olive, are you okay?" he asked her, and,
Oh.
His voice, and his eyes, and the way his hands came up as if to touch her, to make sure that she was intact and really there, though right before his fingers could close around her biceps he hesitated and let them fall back to his sides. It broke her heart a little. "I'm fine." She attempted a smile. I'm sorry to interrupt this. I know it's important that you want to move to Boston, and this is inappropriate. But it's now or never, and I wasn't sure if I'd have the courage to." She was rambling. So she took a deep breath and started again. "I need to tell you something. Something that happened. With. Hey, Olive."
Tom.
But of course. "Hi, Tom." Olive held Adam's gaze and didn't look at him. He did not deserve to be looked at. "Can you give us a minute of privacy?" She could see his oily, fake smile with the corner of her eye. "Olive, I know you're young and don't know how these things work, but Adam's here to interview for a very important position, and he can't just leave," Adam ordered, voice low and cold. Olive closed her eyes and nodded, taking a step back.
Fine.
It was fine. It was Adam's right not to talk to her. "Okay. I'm sorry, Not you. Tom, leave us."
Oh. Well then.
"Dude," Tom said, sounding amused, "you can't just get up from the table in the middle of an interview dinner and leave," Adam repeated. Tom laughed, brazen.
No.
"Not unless you're coming with me. We're collaborators, and if you act like an asshole during a dinner with my department because of some student you're screwing, it will reflect poorly on me. You need to come back to the table and a pretty girl like you should know the score by now. Don't lie to me and say you didn't pick out a dress that's short for my benefit. Nice legs, by the way. I can see why Adam's wasting his time with you." Neither Adam nor Tom had seen Olive take out her phone or press play. They both struggled for a second, confused. They'd clearly heard the words, but were unsure where they came from. Until the recording restarted. Olive, you don't think I accepted you into my lab because you're good, do you? A girl like you, who figured out so early in her academic career that fucking well-known, successful scholars is how to get ahead. You fucked Adam, didn't you? We both know you're going to fuck me for the same reason. What the? Tom took a step forward, hand extended to grab the phone from Olive. He didn't get far because Adam pushed him away with a palm on his chest, making him stumble several steps back. He still wasn't looking at Tom, and not at Olive either. He was staring down at her phone, something dark and dangerous and frighteningly still in his expression. She should have probably been scared. Maybe she was a little. You're telling me you thought your pitiful abstract was selected for a talk because of its quality and scientific importance? Someone here has a very high opinion of herself, considering that her research is useless and derivative and that she can barely put together 2 words without stuttering like an idiot. It was him, Adam whispered. His voice was low, barely a whisper, deceptively calm. His eyes unreadable. It was Tom. The reason you were crying. Olive could only nod. In the background, Tom's recorded voice droned on and on, talking about how mediocre she was, how Adam would never believe her, calling her names. This is ridiculous. Tom was coming closer again, reattempting to take the phone away. I'm not sure what this bitch's problem is, but she's clearly... Adam exploded so fast, she didn't even see him move. One moment he stood in front of her, and the next he was pinning Tom against the wall. I'm going to kill you, he gritted out. Little more than a growl. If you say another word about the woman I love, if you look at her, if you even think about her, I'm going to fucking kill you. Adam, Tom choked out. Actually, I will kill you anyway. People were running toward them. The hostess, a waiter, a few faculty members from Adam's table. They were forming a crowd, yelling in confusion and trying to pull Adam off Tom, with no success. Olive's mind went to Adam pushing Sherry's truck, and she almost laughed in a moment of hysteria. Almost.
Adam, she called.
Her voice was barely audible in the chaos going on around them, but it was what got through to him. He turned to look at her, and there were entire worlds in his eyes. Adam, don't, she whispered. He's not worth it. Just like that, Adam took a step back and let Tom go. An elderly gentleman, probably a Harvard dean, began laying into him, asking for explanations, telling him how unacceptable his behavior was. Adam ignored him, and everyone else. He headed straight for Olive and he cradled her head with both hands, fingers sliding through her hair and holding her tight as he lowered his forehead to hers. He was warm and smelled like himself, like safe and home. His thumbs swept through the mess of tears on her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know, and I'm sorry. It's not your fault, she managed to mumble, but he didn't seem to hear her. I'm sorry. Dr. Carlson. A male voice boomed loudly from behind them, and she felt Adam's body stiffen against hers. I demand an explanation. Adam paid no heed to the man and kept holding Olive. Dr. Carlson, he repeated, this is unacceptable. Adam, Olive whispered. You have to answer him. Adam exhaled. Then he pressed a long, lingering kiss to Olive's forehead before reluctantly disentangling himself. When she was finally able to get a good look at him, he seemed more like his usual self.
Calm.
Angry at the entire world. In charge. Send me that recording immediately, he murmured at her. She nodded, and he turned to the elderly man who'd just approached them.
We need to talk. Privately.
Your office? The other man looked shocked and offended, but he nodded stiffly. Behind him, Tom was making a fuss, and Adam clenched his jaw. Keep him away from me. He turned to Olive before leaving, bending closer to her and lowering his voice. His palm was warm against her elbow. I am going to take care of this, he told her. There was something determined, earnest in his eyes. Olive had never felt safer or more loved. And then I'll come find you, and I'll take care of you,